WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. Celebrating my 54th birthday on the Maryland Crab Cake Tour with our friends at Fadley's at Lexington Market this week. We got some great guests. You'll hear all that next week after the Ravens and the Giants play. And then we're going to get to League Championship Series, World Series, all those things I used to go to so many years ago and things we used to celebrate here in my childhood. I'm welcoming a guy on here that I've always wanted to have on the program. He is a longtime insider, Major League Baseball, New York Times. He's written a book now about my favorite series, the World Series. We don't play that much here, but the last time we did, we beat his Philadelphia Phillies. He was just such a young boy. And I said, if I ever have Kepner on, I'm going to give him a hard time. Tyler Kepner, welcome in, man. Congrats on getting another book done. And I know we're on the eve of some great October memories. Is there anything you want to say about 83 other than my dad almost got killed in the parking lot of Veterans Stadium for sassing Philadelphia fans after he ran out of there with the title,
Yeah, well, the Philly fans were pretty stunned that night, losing 3 in a row at the Vet. I was there. Game
How old were you now? Give me an age on you.
I was 8 back then.
Okay, so 80. I was 15, so I was about 7 years older than you. Okay,
yeah,
good enough.
So I was sitting down the first base line, afternoon game on the Saturday, and it was a great game. 5-4 out the belly, pulling out all the pinch hitters there in the 6th inning, and Joe Morgan coming up as a tying run in the shadows and lining out to Len Secada. I remember just about everything about it.
I sat over the exploding scoreboard. I had a good seat.
Yeah.
I had a 500 level right field seat. The Eddie Murray home run landed. And then Game 5, I was roof. I was up by the Liberty Bell, but more like toward right field. And so we had some moments.
Yeah, I went down to the front row because a lot of the fans, had left by the end of Game 5. And even though it wasn't that late, it was a twilight start, and we were close enough to where I could just, go down 10 or 15 rows, whatever, and just duck under the railings and watch from there. So that's where that was my vantage point for Cal catching that Gary Maddox line drive, and I could still see it in my mind's eye.
You could touch Scotty McGregor when Rick Dempsey jumped into his arms. What you're telling me?
Just about, yeah. Morgan hit a triple, I think, down the line, and Frank Pulley was the umpire, and he was talking with the fans at the time, and he was just kind of giving it to us back and forth, and then he almost missed the play. I remember, and of course Morgan stumbled on third base. The Phillies couldn't even put up one measly run.
Well, listen, I was also in the Sky Dome as a media member in 1993. Joe Carter's home run landed right below me in left field, where the auxiliary press area was out in left field in 93. I went to all of those games. Kurt Schilling, and I'm not proud of this, but he married my best friend from childhood. So there was a whole internal thing. Shonda and I, Shonda got me a D in journalism my senior year. Karen Douglas gave me a D because we were getting croissant sandwiches at the Burger King on Merritt Boulevard. It was first period, Tyler, I've always wanted to have you on, man, and share a little 83. Now, that was your first World Series, right? So I went to the 79 series. I only saw one of the games. I saw Game 2. My dad couldn't get tickets, right? But I went to Game 2 of the Pirates series. But like the World Series as a child, I remember the Mets, Rusty Staub, 73, right? That was my first one. And then after that, the Fisk home run and Reggie Jackson, and then it came to my town and we lost and it sucked and we lost Game 7. Wilver, Darnell, Stargell. So all of that stuff, but all these years later, the World Series still captivates us, man. And you've managed to capture that in not just your childhood of this sadness, and I hope you had a good time at least a few years ago when they won, even though you're a professional, but the World Series a lifetime later, it's a lifetime of memories. It really is, right?
Yeah, it really is. And even that first one, I still, it's more now about the experience than the result. I just to have been there, and the excitement and knowing that my team was the one everybody was watching, my ballpark. It wasn't some neutral site. This is the Vet. This is where I go this is where I am in May.
Your mascot torturing them.
Yeah, when nobody's watching the Fanatic, all of it. So it was magic for me. And when the Phillies made it in 08, my son was about the same age. He was a little younger, but I took him, and it was a Saturday also, and the game didn't start till 10 at night because of a rain delay. So it was a much different experience. He stuck around, man. He was 6 years old. He stuck it out until after midnight. But it was a little different when they played him in the afternoon, wasn't it?
So the 93 World Series that I've already mentioned, it didn't go well for you. And I know I was watching the Phillies play the other night, like, we don't talk about that around here anymore, But 93, you were 18 in 93, right?
Yeah.
So the night of Game 4, the long game and all that, Madonna played the Spectrum across the street. It rained. I scalped the ticket. I went in, I watched Madonna for an hour and a half. I knew the press box attendant at the Spectrum because I covered the Flyers and the Caps through the years. And he told me, hey, the game starts at 10:18 or whatever it was. I'm like, I'm staying until I can cross the street and get back in the stadium, because I did my show from the field that day with Harold Reynolds, who was an Oriole at that time. So that 93 World Series was also probably formative for you. You didn't do the 86 in New York or anything like that. Was your next World Series as a fan, right?
Yeah, and I think that Madonna, it must have been Game 3 because they had a big rain delay in Game 3. Game 4 was the one that
18-16.
15-14, the
okay.
rain, the misty
So it was Tuesday night then. I'll find my tickets.
It's a Tuesday night game, right? But and that was a Toronto blowout. Mahler hit a home run that just got out of there so fast off Danny Jackson. But I mean, that 93 World Series, I tell you, I guess I'm kind of unusual in the sense that I don't dwell on the loss so much because I didn't feel like that year was just a gift. It was like it was out of nowhere. They had finished last the year before. They had all these guys that they always get hurt and they can never really put it together. And then in 93, everybody stayed healthy. They had this 1 year window, was 1 year tiny little opening in the door to get in because the Pirates had been so good and they had to, they lost their free agents. Bonds was gone and Dreybeck and Pena and everybody. The Braves came into the division the next year when they realigned. So it was kind of up for grabs in 93. And the Phillies from the very start just asserted themselves. They had a great spring training. They swept Houston the first series. So it was like, this is going to be a fun year. And it was. They never let you down in the sense like they made the World Series when they had no business doing that. I mean, the Braves were so much better. The Pirates certainly should have gotten in one of those years and they didn't. And the Phillies just barged in. And Toronto was better. The Phillies made a series of it. And in the end, I'm like, yeah, that's the way it would have to be with a weird 15-14 loss. And then Shonda's husband stepping up with the shutout.
Schilling Game 5, one of the greatest performances in World Series history.
147 pitches, just that resilience. And then Game 6 losing on a walk-off home run. I mean, it was such an epic way to lose that it was very fitting, I thought, for that group.
All right, dude, what makes you tick to write a book here? You've written several books. I've written a couple. Usually for me, I need a championship or I need a disaster like Peter Angelo's for 30 years in order to force me to do what you have to do to write a book, which is it's a little like Jack Nicholson in The Shining. It's a little like Shut the Door, all work, no play. Give me your the background on this book and obviously promoting it on the eve of the World Series. Tyler Kepner's here, longtime New York Times, and an author, which is my favorite people to have on the program because I always say, where were you when this idea came to write a book?
Yeah, I did my first book about pitching, and that went really well. That was a great experience, and I learned from that if I'm going to do a book and devote 3 years of my life to it, and sort of have it on top of mind at all times, it's got to be on a topic that I really I'm naturally engrossed in, right? Like I always want to know more about pitching. It's always fascinating to me, and so that was a natural fit. And same thing with the World Series. I just have a memory, not for everything, but really specific memory about stuff that happens in baseball and specifically in the World Series. So I can kind of channel those those thoughts and make those connections pretty handily. So I mean, 3 years ago we got this deal to do it, and I'm like, this is the perfect topic for me because it's only 117 years, and that sounds like a lot, but like it is something you can get your arms around as an author, and to do it thematically rather than chronologically was key. I was not going to do something that was just a research book from verse 1 to the 117th one. I was going to do something with themes. And so I explored, like, managing in the World Series and some of those famous moves, and coming through under pressure, how you handle that. Um, unsung hero, unlikely hero type of guys, what it's like to lose the big game and the infamous moments, GMing, building a World Series team. So looking at those big themes, I was able to kind of weave in all the moments, and really, take the reader into some of the things you might not have known, about some moments that but you didn't, stuff about them that you didn't know, and you're going to learn and have some fun doing it.
The grandest stage, a history of the World Series by Doubleday. And we have the author, Tyler Kepner, here. Man, I've always wanted to have you on, just bitch about the Orioles, complain about it, because there's been a lot of bad. But all of a sudden, like, talking Orioles here, there's like hope here. And as we sit here watching bunting out and watching Manny Machado run around and sort of divided as we root for him or against them. I was always a Tony Gwynn guy. I'm a Padres guy. It's the only jersey in my closet. So I've been wearing it. It kind of stinks today. I've worn it for a couple of days. I'm washing it on the down day here as we get ready for the weekend.
Padre hat right up there.
There you go. And that's almost appropriate. It's not gold, but it's close. I mean, Gwynn wore that hat, so it's okay. In regard to modern baseball, and you mentioned pitching, shift, analytics, all of these things that have changed the game so much over the last decade. All of a sudden, we're going to like wipe the slate clean again. Like, I saw people bidding good night to the shift last week. Like, so some thoughts. The game's about to change again in the same way, I guess, lowering the mounds in '68 or the DH or but this sport is so glacial. One day I'll actually get my press pass back there, but it's slow. We get new ownership. It's been 31 years. Like, everything moves slow. On this thing, they move pretty quick. I mean, all of a sudden they're zipping around a little bit when the ballparks get empty and the game's weirded out. Lineups aren't the same. Pitching isn't the same. Strategy, certainly October strategy is completely different. But the whole notion of having Jim Palmer on our broadcast talking about, like, I threw 351 innings that year at 27 complete games, like, that's been over for a long time in pitch count. But the way pitchers are being used now, if Billy Martin were alive to see this, or Earl Weaver were alive to see this, I don't know how much of it they would recognize.
Yeah, I mean, we see older managers with great track records being phased out. I mean, Tony La Russa came back for a couple of years and won one division, and then the second year didn't work out. Even guys who were thought to be sort of the newer generation, let's say Joe Madden and Joe Girardi, Mike Scioscia, there's kind of no place in the game for them now. It's getting very, more and more analytical, and I guess that analytics is really just information, and the information and the brain power in these front offices has figured out ways to do this thing more efficiently. And in the name of efficiency, I think we've lost some of the charms of baseball. I still love it no matter what, but like when a position player would come in to pitch, that was a rarity, and now it's happened so often it's sort of an annoyance. A shift, a big occasional shift was interesting. Like, oh wow, they're moving all their fielders around just for this guy, and now they do it all the time. So because that's where the ground balls go. Like that's how you get outs, and the hitters respond as they do, trying to put the ball over the fence because that's the most efficient way to score. Because the pitchers are so good, you get it. Like they present it all in a way that's very easy to understand, but it does take away some of the familiar rhythms that we grew up on. And
I would say it takes away a lot of the fun. I mean, like, to some degree, hit and run, bunting, sort of everything feels predetermined to some degree. And how many guys miss bats and how many strikeouts there are. I mean, you're really close. You watch a lot of it. I don't watch as much. And when I come in now, like even in the playoffs, and I know the playoffs are weird. The playoffs are more normal because it's tight and it's the way it, and good teams. It's a little different. Right. There's not a whole lot of overmatch. But man, when you just fly into a game, I remember I went into a game in Pittsburgh about 4 years ago. I went to the Hall of Fame and I brought group back, and nobody wanted to go to the game. The Ravens fans were like, I want to go straight back home after the Hall of Fame induction of Ray Lewis. And we went to a Pirates game because I'm like, it's the most beautiful stadium. I did 30 ballparks in 30 days in 15 after my wife had cancer. So I went to all the ballparks, had the experience of all of it. But sitting and watching a game you don't care about, and the Cardinals are playing the Pirates, and it's a day in August, and you're just there, just to see the shifting and to see the game differently from a fly-in. I'll never forget that day and saying, what's happened to my game? Because to your point, it was 54 outs and at bats of wild. I mean, I remember Cal used to shade Bunbury over a little bit or Cal Senior move some guys around. This is, and I've talked to coaches, and I know you're in it. I'm not anymore. But when I had lunch with a coach at Amici's 2 years ago that's been in the game 25 years, knew him from back when I was a media guy. And he said, Ness, I get to the ballpark at 1 o'clock now and I look at paperwork. He said, back when you knew me when I was a third base coach of the Mariners 20 years ago, I showed up at 4:30 and hit fungos. It's not that. The game is completely different, and I wouldn't recognize it as a media member, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like Sam Perlato would have been, but yeah, I mean,
you're wrong on that, by the way, but that's really good. That's good.
It's a Baltimore guy with a Mariner third base coach.
This guy's not a Baltimore guy.
Okay, but he can coach the Orioles, right? Yeah. So anyway,
This guy is a rare manager with a Japanese background. That's all I'm going to say. That's it. So you just got it. So go ahead.
So there are fewer possibilities, I think, on each play, and that's part of what makes baseball so enchanting to me as a kid, because football, you got to run or pass. Baseball, was so many things can happen. Guy gets on first, and you got to start thinking if you're going to run. Home runs, sure, you could hit home runs, but it didn't happen as much. Sure, there were strikeout pitchers. I mean, my favorite guy of all time is Steve Carlton. I wrote a book called K. I mean, I like the strikeout, but a little too much of a good thing is bad. So I remember watching in reverse, sort of, the College World Series a few years ago, before they, I think, changed the bats around, and no one hit a home run the entire College World Series. And it was a really different experience, watching a game when you know that a home run's not a possibility, right? So in reverse, now you watch a major league game sometimes, and it's a much different experience knowing that the bunt is probably not a possibility, the stolen base is probably not a possibility, the strikeout is a very high possibility. So it recalibrates what you expect, and there's not as many fun things going on.
Tyler Kepner has fun things going on. He's written about the history of the World Series. I hope you go out and pick up his book and certainly read his great writings and follow him out on social media. The book is The Grandest Stage, A History of the World Series. Dude, our window is closed. Come back again. Please visit. My name's Aparicio. I was born into this thing here. So, and hopefully one day it would be a pleasure of mine to witness the Philly Fanatic over a pretzel with you somewhere in South Philadelphia. All right?
Sounds great, man. Yeah, are you related to Louis?
That's how I got here. I'll send you chapter 3. Yeah.
Right.
Louis brought my father in 1964, met my wife, my mother in 65. I was born in 68. I'm the last Aparicio here. Yes.
Wow.
So, yes.
Wow. Pretty cool. All right. Well, hey, great.
Super cool.
Great talking with you, man. All right.
Thank you, man. Appreciate you. Appreciate your writing. Keep up the great work.
Okay. All right.
Tyler Kepner, great book. New York Times best-selling author. I like those guys. Those are the Pulitzer Prize winners. We've been getting those around here a little bit. Maryland Crab Cake Tour continues on. We're at Fadley's this week for my birthday, and next week we'll continue on as well. All brought to you by our friends at the Maryland Lottery, Goodwill, and Window Nation. I am Nestor. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore positive.